All right. Hey, guys. It's me again, Sam Stein, managing editor at the Bulwark, back from July 4th, where, did my patriotic thing. I'm joined by Will Sommer, author of False Flags. And look, every 4 years, like Olympic athletes, they train for the Olympics and, it's their moment. We sort of wait for it. We anticipate it and it's broadcast and they give it their all. And it just so happens that today is Will Sommer's Olympics. We finally have some closure, although who knows, with the Epstein files. And if anyone is going to talk about what this means, it's going to be Will, because he's been following this thing for how long? How long have you been following? Sorry.
Oh, I mean, gosh, since Jeffrey Epstein was rearrested back in 2019 or something. Okay, so now we're looking at the conclusion for now, the end of the beginning.
All right, set us up. What happened last night that's prompting us to jump on YouTube and talk about this?
Right. So the Justice Department put out a memo on a Sunday night of a 3-day weekend, a classic moment when so many eyeballs will be on something.
I don't know, man. I would have done it if I really wanted to bury it. I would have done it on Saturday or Friday night.
Yes.
Right as the fireworks were going on. But go on.
So the memo said, essentially that this long-awaited revelation of the Jeffrey Epstein client list, any other documents, the Epstein files, maybe future charges against his clients. That's not going to happen. And they said also Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. Here's a video of his cell door. You can see no one else came in. So basically they're saying the Epstein case is closed. No other information, no other charges are going to be coming out.
They were kind of saying that already though, right?
They had. I mean, you can see that there was sort of this walk up to it. Dan Bongino and Kash Patel, the heads of the FBI, did an interview where they said, he killed himself. It's over, whatever. And so, but I think this is an official DOJ FBI memo. There's sort of a finality to it.
Yeah, I suppose, but I don't know. This thing always rears its ugly head, and there's conspiracy theorists waiting in the wings. And I have to imagine that it's not going to be just widely accepted. Oh, Bongino says it's done, therefore it's done.
Well, yeah, I mean, there was so much anticipation around this. I mean, this is basically half of what QAnon is all about, for one thing. I mean, but even outside of that, I mean, there was this belief in the MAGA movement that there was this Epstein client list, and it was going to have not just, Prince Andrew, but it was going to have all these high-ranking...
Just Prince Andrew.
Right, I know. That's where it was going to have all these high-ranking people or people in Hollywood, Oprah, whatever, all these people. I mean, we've seen all the fake Epstein flight lists that'll come out, and it'll say, right, like Drake or whatever, who knows. And they were so excited. And then now it's nothing. Yeah. And in reality, there probably was no Jeffrey Epstein client list. All the Epstein experts were saying that, but Republicans had really pinned their hopes on some big revelation.
I don't know. It always struck me as so stupid that he would create. I mean, maybe, I don't know. I don't want to get too into it, but here is the theory that this guy is orchestrating this incredible cabal of sex slavery involving the highest ranking officials across the globe. And, I'm going to write down their names in a book. It never made real sense to me that he would go to great lengths to hide it all and then just make the stupid decision of putting it down in paper.
Well, the other thing I would add here is that there's also the second half of this is the belief that Jeffrey Epstein was running some kind of blackmail operation, and right, probably for the Israeli intelligence agency, the Mossad. And so the DOJ memo also said he also wasn't blackmailing anybody. And so that kind of, there's this rising tide of anti-Semitism, anti-Israel sentiment on the right. And so that sort of deflates their bubble. And so that's sort of the second part.
Sorry, folks. Okay, well, look, it's not so easy for the White House, obviously, to just put this genie back in the bottle. First of all, how instrumental were Bongino and Patel prior to joining the administration at pushing this stuff?
Well, at least in Bongino's case, I mean, he was a very popular podcaster, talk radio host, and he was talking all the time about all the secrets that would be revealed by the Epstein files. Just before we got on here, I looked up. I mean, he said he's like Bill Clinton, the Clinton family is knee deep in all this, huge revelations to come out. And now he's saying, he's like the Mythbusters. He's saying, why do you guys care about all this? And the real one here, who I think is going to have trouble getting out of it, is Attorney General Pam Bondi.
Why?
Well, she was sort of late to the party in terms of talking about Epstein, but she really latched onto it. And I think, speculating here, I think she saw it as her attempt, because she, unlike Kash Patel, Bongino, a lot of other people.
She wasn't like a podcaster. She wasn't like that type. Well, she was on Fox a bunch, but she wasn't like I don't know. She didn't do dalliances with the crazy conspiracists.
She doesn't have like kind of like her own audience. Kind of, she's not like as clouded up as a lot of these people. And so she seems to have sort of seen this big revelation as like her moment. And so we know that in late February,
like she could buy credibility with this crowd.
Exactly. She could be like, I'm the Epstein Avenger or whatever.
Right.
And so, a bunch of right-wing influencers were visiting the White House. She shows up unprompted with the Epstein binders and said, this is the first tranche of documents we're releasing. It was a big debacle because it all turned out to be public already.
Right. And then let's play this clip because it wasn't even that long ago. Let's see, February 21st. So it's not it's somewhat long ago, I guess. But she was fairly explicit. Like she said, I have the client list on my desk. I mean, it wasn't like I'm reviewing what could be the client list. She's like, I have the list on my desk. And not only was she pushing out, but the White House's rapid response Twitter account pushed out the video of her saying this. So they put their account behind this. So let's take a listen to this, and then you and I are going to sort of game how she tries to wiggle out of this one.
The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump. I'm reviewing that. I'm reviewing JFK files, MLK files. That's all in the process of being reviewed because that was done at the directive of the president from all of these agencies.
All right, so there she is. It's on her desk. She's looking at it. She's going to be releasing the list of the clients. All right, so how do you wiggle out of that?
I think she's going to say that when she was saying it's on my desk, she meant like the Epstein matter broadly is on my desk.
Man, she said she had a list. How do you get out of that?
Well, and the reality is she kept ratcheting it up even more. I mean, the binders thing was after the list remark. And then in, I think, May.
Wait, hold on. She said she had the list on her desk and then released the binders, and the binders debacle happened after that?
That's correct. We would have to double check that. But
okay.
Yeah. And so then in May, I think there's this kind of, you can see this push and pull between the right-wing media and the administration here, because this is such a weird story. James O'Keefe gets her on tape talking to a nanny about and being like, this was like a really undercover story. And so basically like there's this footage of, it's like another James O'Keefe operative. They're all circulating around DC, who's like on another mission, sees Pam Bondi at a restaurant. And she's like, Pam Bondi, what's up with Epstein? I got my buttonhole camera right here. And Pam Bondi goes, oh my gosh, it's like thousands of victims and we have all these documents and videos. It's going to be crazy. Right. And then O'Keefe goes to DOJ and says, we have this video. So then Bondi tries to front run it by then saying at the White House, oh, we have all these documents. So there's this weird thing where he kind of forces her hand, because I guess she's boasting about it privately. So then again, she said there were all these huge documents that were going to come out, and then nothing.
So, but that also was sort of, maybe you would know better than I would, but I mean, I'm not trying to downplay the severity of what happened here because it's horrible. But it wasn't 1,000 victims as far as I'm aware. It was like 250 or so, right?
Well, just a few days ago, the AP had an interesting story that basically said, what are they talking about? All the lawyers who have been involved in this case, the right. Sort of Epstein experts said like thousands of victims or 1,000 victims is way more than anyone anticipated. And there's this talk that Bondi claims that there are, these databases of videos and servers and all this stuff.
How's she going to get out of it? I mean, she's just making all these promises, making all these accusations that just aren't true. Like, I mean, what's she going to say? Oh, the list I had was actually a to-do list of things around like disclosing Jeffrey Epstein stuff. Like, I don't understand how you can undo what you said.
Yeah, I mean, I think she's in a tight spot here, and I think maybe it's time to start packing the bags for Florida because, we have members of Congress like Anna Paulina Luna, James Comer, who are more than willing, I think, to put the screws to her on this. And I mean, she's kind of in a bind.
Why would they put the screws to her and not to Patel? Patel is the one who works for her.
Right. I think Kash Patel and Bongino are seen as more like MAGA devotees than Pam Bondi. And I think Pam Bondi is seen as maybe a little more expendable, at least by right-wing media figures. I think also there's this aspect of, we've seen in the 12 hours or so since this came out, that there has been, the right-wing media figures are often very like quiet initially. They just say they just say, oh, I guess never mind about Epstein, but then they don't really like get a political valence to it. Since then, though, we've seen a lot of people like Benny Johnson, for example, coming out, I believe it was a binder recipient, coming out and saying, this is like 1984, all this stuff. And a lot of that heat is falling on Pam Bondi. People are saying Pam Bondi resign, all this stuff. So those are sort of the early tea leaves.
Yeah,
I mean, she was the one.
But she didn't. She was the one that's promising them gold. And then Patel and Bongino come in and say, no, we don't have it.
Well, but it's a DOJ and FBI memo. The other thing I would say here is like the reactions are just really cracking me up in terms of like how the Trump supporters.
What's the online response basically?
Well, there's a lot of. There's kind of like, we can put them in two camps. I mean, there's one camp of people who are like often more administration critical, people who are also kind of in that more anti-war with Iran camp, who have criticized it in the past, and they're saying, this is the deep state. Trump has been, adopted by the deep state. The people who got the binders, who are more sort of like establishment right-wing characters, they're starting to get restless too. And so people like Benny Johnson, Jack Posobiec, they're getting mad. And so I think, I think a head might have to roll here. There's just really no way that you can square this. I mean, this has been the storyline, or one of the main storylines for.
Right. I mean, I guess the way to square would be like, okay, I guess I was wrong, but that's not possible, right? I'm being serious about this because you and I had this conversation a little while ago about like, what's the best way to unconvince conspiracy theorists about the conspiracy, right? And your response was kind of chilling in reflection. It was like, you just have to move on to a different topic. Like you can never convince them. Maybe that's the case here, and they just keep going on down the rabbit hole and find some other reason to believe that Bongino and Patel and Bondi were co-opted by some deep state figure. But maybe they can admit they're wrong. I don't know. Is that too much to ask?
I think often the conspiracy theory just becomes bigger. So like after 2020, they said, well, Trump was supposed to purge the deep state, but I guess they were just stronger. Or, Mike Cernovich today, who's very involved in sort of Epstein conspiracy theories, he's saying, well, the world is governed by pedophiles. What are you going to do? And he basically said, he's like, there's a hierarchy in this world, and Trump's here, and the pedophiles are way up here. Which,
so Trump is controlled by the pedophile cabal.
That's the pro-Trump take.
Convinced Bondi and Bongino that there was nothing there. Jesus Christ, I can't even put my head around it. It's depressing, honestly. It's like, it kind of overshadows and diminishes the actual human suffering that this man caused. What about Elon, though? Didn't he at one point when he was leaving say Trump was on the list?
Yes, he did. Yeah. So Elon obviously burned a lot of bridges when he said Trump, essentially Trump's a pedophile and on the list, and that's why the files won't come out. And he's been tweeting. I mean, this is the last straw. What a scandal this is that they aren't going to release the files. So maybe the America Party will get to the bottom of it.
It's the main platform they have. All right. Well, I appreciate you kind of mucking it up for us in this sewer of our society and coming out relatively clean, I think.
Yeah. So just a little.
I mean, yeah. Well, at least you're sane for now. Will Sommer, ladies and gentlemen, author of the False Flag newsletter. He's going to be writing about all this for this evening's newsletter. So you should subscribe to that, and you should subscribe to our YouTube feed where you get conversations like this. Until then, we'll catch you later.
Hey, YouTube fam, if you want to support the Bulwark, the best way to do it is by becoming a YouTube Bulwark Plus member. The Bulwark is truly independent. We have no corporate overlords. We're not settling any dumb lawsuits with Trump. By joining, you help support our work, and you can get a bunch of perks right here on this platform. Ad-free content, bonus videos, live streams, and some emojis of me, which I guess some people want. So come join, come hang out, become a Bulwark YouTube Plus member, and I'll be seeing you in the comments. So behave.